God's mirror. Leave your beautiful reflections in God's eyes. Written by Gayle Mallare. Section 1, Darkest Shadows. Chapter 1, Broken Reflection. It was our high school intramurals day. I was sitting at the uppermost bleachers of our school's basketball court. Loud cheers from the two opposing teams caused a deafening sound every time the ball entered the basket. I hate being in a crowd of people, but on that day, I was there to sign up for the attendance. Two freshman girls approached my direction and took their seats at my right. They also started shouting and clapping. At the corner of my eye, I can see the girl with the long hair, looking at me meticulously from head to toe. She started asking her friend, "Who knows me?" "Who's that girl?" "She's the sister of Sophia, not her true name," she answered. "Are you sure? But why is she ugly?" "She looks nothing like Sophia," the girl added with a chuckle. They were talking between them, but those words entered my ears loud and clear. I was dumbfounded upon hearing their conversation. It felt as if thousands of needles were slowly piercing my heart. The thought of the word ugly gradually penetrated my mind. Am I ugly? As I hear the continuous cheer around me, it was as though they are shouting the word ugly, 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 over and over again. I covered my ears and found myself quickly rising up from my seat. I walked my way towards the school dormitory. One foot goes past the other. 1 step, 2 steps, and 100 steps ahead. As I entered my room, I crumbled down my knees and broke into tears. I tried so hard not to make noise as I was worried someone might hear me. I spotted a small mirror across the corner of my room. I stared at it blankly and I began to see a girl staring straight back at me. From under her dark curly hair, peeks a pair of gloomy brown eyes beneath those black eyebrows. She bears a brown pointed face, a round short bridged nose right above those thin dry lips. All of a sudden, I saw her eyes filled to the brim with tears gushing down her cheeks. The tears burst forth like water from a dam, spilling down her face. The wounding words from earlier are repeatedly playing in her mind. I swiftly looked away. I couldn't look at her any longer. The next morning, as I was preparing for school, I was in my room combing my dark curly thick hair, when a dorm mate came standing at the door. She was staring at me intently when all of a sudden, she burst out laughing as she said, "You look like Anita." Maybe she called me Anita because of my curly hair and brown complexion. This dorm mate might be saying it as a joke, but those words hit me so hard. It was as if I am hearing the words, "You are ugly," again. I was deeply hurt that very moment, but I didn't show her. To prevent my tears from falling, I bit my lips and shared a fake laugh with her. Every morning, as I looked into the mirror, I began to see myself as they did. I started hating myself every day, and each day a little bit more. I hate how I look. I hate my dark curly hair. I hate the color of my skin. I hate my eyes and my nose. I hate my face. I hate my voice. I hate how my clothes look on me. I hate everything about me. I started feeling insecure of myself. Little by little, I began to lose a lot of my self-esteem. Throughout my life growing up, I have been compared to my sisters wherever I went. I have 4 brothers and 4 sisters. Almost all of them have straight hair and fair complexion, while I have curly black hair and dark skin. People always talk about how I look different from my siblings. One time when I was in elementary, we visited a distant aunt. I can see the baffled look in the eyes of my aunt, as she glanced at me and my sisters. She looked towards my mom, as she points at me. "Is this really your daughter?" "Yes, she's my 6th child," my mom answered. "Oh," my aunt muttered, "she looks different from her sisters." My mom just smiled at her. There are times my siblings' friends would visit our home, or we meet a friend of theirs outside. I often hear words like, "Is this really your sister?" I hate hearing those words over and over again, but I couldn't help it. I know it's just natural for them to ask that question because that's what they see. Nothing from my features bear a resemblance to my siblings' appearance. But still, those words break my heart every time. My parents never compared me with my sisters, nor did I receive negative comments of how I look from my siblings. They always made me feel that I'm loved, and I am not different from them. But it did not suffice to ease the agony I felt every time I was compared to them or whenever I was called ugly. There are times I feel envy towards my sisters, especially when people show appreciation of how pretty they are, or when our relatives adore them for how they look. Sometimes, I feel jealous of how they are enjoying their life with their friends. Back then, I even thought that I don't have friends, because I am not pretty like them. Every time I felt this envy within me, these floods of questions pop out from my head. Why am I not pretty just like my sisters? Why am I born different from them? Why don't I have that kind of hair too? Why don't I have fair complexion too? Why don't I have that kind of face too? I sat across my mom in front of the furnace one evening. As these kinds of questions started playing in my head, I looked up to her and asked, "Mom, am I adopted?" I can see a surprised look in her eyes upon hearing my question. She chuckled. "What kind of question is that? Of course not. You are my child. Your father was with me when you were born." I can hear a bit of worry from her voice. I forced a smile and slightly nodded. As I laid in my bed, my thoughts of why I look different from them still linger in my head. No, I'm not adopted. I know it deep within myself. I just asked Mom that random question that popped out from my head that evening, maybe because I was just tired of being compared to my siblings. It was a part of me complaining why I am not born good-looking, just as they were. Chapter 2. Stolen Smile. One fine morning, I was walking down the stairs with my sister Sophia, after posting the daily readings in the school liturgical bulletin. From behind, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was our school principal. She knows my sister well because she's the one who helped her with her medications when my sister was diagnosed with cancer. She pulled me in a corner. I felt so nervous, thinking I might have done something wrong. She looked at me saying, "Cindy, you look older than your sister." I looked down. That's it. I'm being compared again. I felt her hand lifting my face as she said, "Do you know why I'm telling you this?" She paused. I can't look her in the eyes. I was afraid she might notice I am about to cry. In my head I answered, "Of course I know. I have been compared countless times." But I was astounded with the next words that came out from her mouth. "It's because I never see you smile." I was caught with her words. I smiled at her shyly as she climbed up the stairs towards her office. Her words kept ringing in my head. I often hear people saying I look so serious most of the time, and that day, she made it clear to me that it is because I never wear a smile. Receiving comparisons and unpleasant words from people as a child up to my teenage years, I didn't realize that smile gradually left my face. I was afraid of people. It seemed like people are always looking at me with watchful eyes wherever I went, as if I am being assessed by my looks all the time. I would always look down. I would always try to hide my face. Every time I walked into a crowd, my heart started racing. I was scared to look at their faces. I thought, back then, that everyone just thinks the same about me. I hated attending school events, family gatherings, or any kind of occasions where a lot of people would be gathered. I can't stand being in the midst of many people for long period. I find it suffocating. I seldom attend parties like weddings or birthday celebrations in our place, even if sometimes I am the only one left at home. I hated being in places where I was with my sisters. I just thought I'll only be compared to them anyway. Every intramural during our high school, I only joined ground demo competitions or any event where everyone is required to participate. I would only be present on the first and last days, as well as during the checking of attendance. During town fiestas, our high school actively participates in some of the events, especially since our school is located at the heart of the municipality. Oftentimes, my schoolmates take part in the performances and competitions. As for me, I only join the parade, then go back straight to my room in the school dormitory and stay there all day. I created a different world. My room became my sanctuary. I hugged my pillows and stared at the ceiling. It was my comfort zone. It is the sole witness of how I endured my struggles, away from the painful judgment of many people. I was afraid of the stage. In class, I consider reports, oral exercises, and presentations as a nightmare. From my high school days up to my early years in college, I always felt like I'm embarrassing myself every time I have to perform in front of people. Ms. Lappow on stage, Ms. Mallare on the deck, Ms. Minas, prepare, dictates my first-year high school English teacher. It was our first oral presentation for the Practical Spoken English Program, PSEP, as part of our curriculum. My heart has been pounding hard even from moments ago, but as I heard my name, it felt as though my heart was slamming against my rib cage. I grabbed my PSEP book with my shaky hands. I couldn't even turn it to the right page. My classmate in front is now reciting the last sentence of her piece. And now I can feel my knees tremble from under my table. Ms. Mallare on stage, Ms. Minas on the deck, Ms. Aldico prepare. Holding my book, I slowly got up from my seat and all of a sudden, I heard a thud. My seat toppled. It was a wooden bench and it must have been pushed by my quivering knees. Laughter filled the room. I can feel my face turning red from embarrassment as I hurriedly put the bench back in place. I walked up front with my head bent down. As I slowly faced my classmates, my entire body started shaking. It was my first time standing in front of a crowd, at most 45 people if I may count. Even with shaky hands, I managed to lift the book at the level of my chest. I started reading the first sentences. My voice was so soft that I couldn't even hear myself. Ms. Mallare, please speak louder, my teacher requested. I paused for a while. I then read the piece from the beginning, this time a little louder but with a wobbling voice. I can hear faint giggles in the room. Even though I was having a difficulty of catching my breath from nervousness, I just continued reading. I couldn't recite the words properly. It was so awful. As soon as I finished the last line, I quickly went back to my seat. It has been the same throughout all my performances in school. I was constantly an academic achiever since my elementary days, but I really find it hard doing reports or any kind of performances that involves being in front. Whenever I have a presentation to give, I worry about it for days or even weeks in advance. The night before, I couldn't get to sleep and I start being anxious knowing what lies ahead. I haven't gotten better even after lots of presentations I've made. Even during my early years in college, I still quiver when talking in front. I was afraid of public places. Before entering college, I attended a 2-month summer bridging program offered by my scholarship, held at St. Louis University, Baguio City. Things were so hard for me at that point of my life since it is my first time in a much larger environment, a city. Since our boarding house is located at La Trinidad, Benguet, I needed to take a 45-minute ride every day. I can still remember the first time I rode a jeepney. My heart was beating so fast as the jeepney stopped in front of me. As I climbed my way in, it felt like all the passengers' eyes are on me. My knees began to tremble, so I quickly took a vacant seat at the side of the driver and placed my bag on my lap to hide the quivering. I didn't know why, but I really can't avoid the thought that everyone is looking at me wherever I went. I was always anxious of my actions, afraid that I might do anything embarrassing. Manung, para, I muttered as the jeepney neared the university main gate. But then again, it was so soft that only the woman beside me heard it. Para da kaya, she shouted, and the jeepney stopped. I smiled at her shyly and I quickly got off. One afternoon when my sister invited us for lunch at a fast food restaurant near the university, I was with my cousin as we were both taking the summer bridging. As we passed through the door, I can see that all the dining tables are full of people, seated side by side. I knew for a fact that they were all busy eating, but I just can't get away from the thought that someone is staring at me. They might notice that I feel so awkward. They might notice that this is my first time at a fast food restaurant. I hid my face with my dark curly hair. We waited for my sister as she ordered our food. After quite a while, she came carrying 2 trays, so I hurriedly helped her with the other tray. It was a tray of drinks. I was very careful not to spill it because if I do, I will just get people's attention and I'll just make a fool out of myself. I was able to put the drinks down without spilling, even though my hands were shaking. My body trembles whenever I'm around people and it comes naturally. I couldn't control it. I was afraid of conversations. I have been a shy, silent type person since I was a little girl, but it has gotten worse as I grew up. I became more terrified to talk to people, thinking that I might say anything wrong or they might judge what I say. Sometimes when someone asks me a question, as usual, I start to panic, I feel my heart start to race, and the words get caught in my throat. I quickly mutter a response but say as little as possible. I can't meet their gaze. I was afraid they would notice a frightened look in my face. Sometimes they would just stop talking to me. I was still wondering when my smile will be back. That smile that has been stolen by these fears buried deep within myself. That smile that I am aware only I can restore. I was hoping one day I can be freed from my fears. Maybe if I'm freed, I can finally wear a smile. Chapter 3. Enclosed in a frame. Ting, ting, ting. I can feel the excitement radiating from my seatmate as the school bell rang. It was the end of our first 2 periods in the morning, which means it's break time. We will continue this next meeting, our Filipino teacher announced. As soon as she left the room, my classmates made their way out the door in a flock. I was the only one left in the room. I took a book from under my table and began flipping through its pages. Sometimes, when I get bored of reading, I just take a nap for the entire break. At times, some of my classmates would also stay in the room. They would gather in groups, share stories, and laugh together, while I am just there sitting alone in my chair, reading or sleeping. My days went on like that, until such time that a school regulation was proposed where students are not allowed to stay in the classrooms during recess time. It was meant to avoid the stealing of valuable items among students. That time, I would sit under the cypress tree beside the bleachers at the side of the school building. I sit there alone, waiting for the bell to ring so that I can go up our room for the next class. During those days when I was in high school, I have been comfortable being by myself most of the time. I didn't have friends. I do have companions from time to time, but I always preferred to be alone. I was scared. Scared that if someone knows me, they would notice my fears. Scared that if they have me as a friend, they would figure out I'm just weird and boring. Scared that I will just cause them inconvenience when they're with me. Little by little, I built walls around myself. Walls to hide myself from people and from the world. I became used to it that I didn't even know how loneliness feels. My fears went on even after I graduated high school and moved to the city for college. Entering the SLU main gate one Monday morning, I noticed that I was the only one walking up the stairs. I looked at my phone and realized it was only 7:10 a.m. in the morning. I arrived too early for the first day of our summer bridging. I spotted a park near the entrance of the school. I went right in and sat on one of the benches. I put my headphones on and waited for my class to start. All throughout the 2 months of the summer bridging program, I never did try to make friends with my fellow scholars. Every day, I would arrive early, wait in the park, attend my summer classes, eat my packed lunch alone at the park, sometimes with my cousin who also took the summer bridging, and go straight home after my classes. Most of my fellow scholars are so active and easygoing that sometimes I get intimidated. I would always stay in the corner of the room. I was afraid of meeting new people. The look on their faces would always seem like they're thinking, "This girl looks weird." It is as if they can see right through me and see what a mess I am inside. That kind of thought was always present in my head, just like when I started taking my college degree at Benguet State University. I decided to take up agricultural engineering as it was in line with my DOST scholarship and it was suggested by my brother as a good course for me to take. I had tons of worries upon entering college life, especially since I really find it hard dealing with people. It will be a much larger environment for me to live in, a lot different than when I was in high school, since I would be meeting people from the different municipalities and nearby provinces. My fears of being judged and criticized grew bigger. I barely survived my high school life in the province. What if I can't survive my college days with these fears that I have? It was the first day of school. Across the hallway of the engineering building, a crowd of students can be seen, occupying the entire hallway on both ends. I can hear chatters around me as some are already gathered in groups, getting to know each other. I was there alone, standing beside the door, waiting for my class to start. As I entered the classroom, I sat at the middle seat beside the window. In every class I attended, even during my high school days, I always chose not to sit in front as it made me uncomfortable and I was afraid to be called on by the teacher. I also don't sit at the back because I have a poor eyesight. I would always sit at the middle, as much as possible at the sides, beside the window or beside the wall. I find it comfortable and it somehow lessens the need to engage in conversations with my classmates. My lonesome days carried on for weeks, until such time someone was able to reach out to me, but did not last long. "Excuse me," says a voice beside me, one afternoon as we were waiting for our math teacher. She was saying something I couldn't hear. Her voice was so soft that it was devoured by the noise of chatters and laughter around us. I leaned closer to her and asked, "What was that?" She also leaned forward. "The book that our teacher told us to buy for this subject. Who's the author again?" "I'm planning to buy it this afternoon," she uttered. I pulled out my notebook from my bag and turned it to the page where I wrote the details. "It's College Algebra by William Hart, 4th edition," I answered. She wrote it down on a piece of paper. "Thank you," she mumbled as she looked at me with a shy smile. I smiled back. From that day, I started to notice that we have similarities. She is also a silent type of girl, but even with it, she would always be the first to initiate a conversation with me. We became seatmates in every subject, if seats were not designated by the teacher. Since we had general subjects during our first year, we had to take classes, not only at our own college but also from the other colleges at the university. The university is wide and the college buildings are far from each other. Sometimes we needed to walk a kilometer distance in order to get to our next class. Others would ride a jeepney, especially if the time schedule between their two classes is tight. During those times, in our daily classes, she was the one whom I walked with whenever we needed to move from one college to another. She became my constant companion every time we waited for our classes to start or whenever there were orientations in the college. I can say that she has become a friend, but not that type of a friend whom I was close with. She was a busy person since she helps her father at the farm. She goes straight home after class just like myself. We just see each other during classes and whenever there are mandatory events in the college that we need to attend to. She later on shifted her course after failing a subject. But even in the short time spent with her, I admire her personality and I treasure the short moments we shared together. As I went back to being by myself all the time, one of my comfort zones in the university is the library. I love staying there during my vacant time and whenever some of my classes are cancelled. I like how quiet it is. I like how people there are just doing their own thing. I always sit at my favorite spot in one of the mini cubicles designed for reading and studying. I would read books, do my requirements, and sometimes I sleep when I'm bored. My early years in college have been the same every single day, just like any other day when I was still in high school. I go to school, attend my classes, go to the library and go straight home. I was enclosed in my own frame. I was trying to shield myself from people's criticisms and negative perceptions about me. Little did I know I was slowly falling apart. Chapter 4. Mirror of Darkness. I came to a point in my life where my days began to get darker and darker. I started to feel worthless. I started to view life as meaningless. I began to question the purpose of my existence. Why am I here anyway? I don't have friends. I don't know how to connect with the world. Nor do I know whom to connect with. I hate myself. I hate this so-called life. I tried living through each day, despite the misery it brings. My heart is always heavy, all its soft parts are gone. I bottled everything up and hid my emotions. I pretended to be okay. I just didn't want to be a burden, especially to my family. I just didn't want to have people worry about me. I was afraid of telling anyone how I feel. I had the thought that nobody would understand me. I felt ashamed of what was happening to me. Every single night, when my sisters were already sound asleep, rivers of tears escaped from my eyes. My screams compressed into whimpers as I always struggled not to be heard. My body twitched trying to hold back the furious storms of emotions inside. Sometimes I just wanted to sleep and never wake up. You see, I can't pretend that I'm okay. I can't fake it anymore. I'm hopeless, helpless, and I'm just afraid I will never get better. I got home from school, one gloomy day. Alone in the room, I sat on the floor. I held it there, gripped it with my hand. I rolled up my sleeves, looked to my arm, then to my wrist, took this tiny device and swiped it across my flesh. It began to bleed. The pain that had always been killing me inside suddenly floated away. I felt okay for once, watching it bleed away. I smiled at myself, thinking this feeling would last forever. I decided to cut it once more. If one felt good, then more cuts might take all the pain away for good. 2 cuts. 3 cuts, and a few more cuts. I was freed from my long-time agony for a moment. Tiny drops of blood started falling on the floor. I just loved the feeling of hurting myself from the outside. It somehow lessened the anguish buried deep inside my heart. I did the cut a few more times whenever I was at my darkest. I was lost. I was miserable. Some days, desperation corners me. Other days, I feel nothing at all. I go home, I look in the mirror, I cry, I think I'm worthless, I want to die. And the worst thing is, the next day, it happens all over again. I grew tired of life. Why was I even born? I didn't know the reason for trying, for talking, or for breathing. I don't even feel like I belong to this world. I feel so unworthy and unwanted. If this is how my life is going to be, then I don't want it anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be in school. I don't want to be at home. I just don't want to be anywhere. I don't want to live. I don't want to exist. As these thoughts came creeping in my head, I found myself walking into the woods. I watched my footsteps as I followed the mountain path. I could hear the chirping of birds above me and the hushing sound of the wind as it sways the leaves of the pine trees. Sounds that once comforted my forlornness got me irritated at that very moment. But I spilled not a word, not even of frustration. Sharp twigs were laid along the way, some of which were wounding my bare feet. But then again, I couldn't care less. With no destination in mind, I went on. As my feet pointed to wherever it felt like going to, my mind was slowly reaching to my heart, shouting within, I want to disappear from the world. The world doesn't need anyone like me. I'm tired of existing. The world would not notice if I'm gone, anyway. Maybe except for my family. I continued walking nowhere in the midst of the tall pine trees. My feet started to become heavy, only to find out I'm already at the edge of a tall steep cliff. I can see sharp piles of rocks below me. I told myself, now is the time to do what I've always wished for. To end this misery. Now, I can finally be freed from any pain. I was about to jump when my mind suddenly went blank. I stepped back in an instant. I didn't know what made me hesitate in a glimpse of that moment, but I just found myself running straight back home. I saw my mom sitting on a chair. I ran to her and fell on my knees. Even a single drop of tear hasn't gone from my eyes when I was at the mountain, but as soon as I saw my mom, I burst out crying. I couldn't hold back any longer. I clenched my fists and punched it against my chest. I sobbed heavily as I released all my frustrations, weariness, disappointments, and hate for myself and for the life that I have. I felt a soothing warmth as she gently held me in her arms and whispered, "You are my precious child. Please love yourself because we love you." I looked at her and saw tears running down her cheeks. It broke my heart even more. It was the very first time I shared my frustrations about my life to someone. The heavy pain that has always been buried deep inside my heart is slowly drifting away as I let all my bottled emotions out. My mom listened to me with full concern. She was there crying with me. She shared the pain with me. I just thought no one would ever understand me, but she did. She reminded me of how precious I am to her, and she comforted me with words of love and concern. Chapter 5. God, who are you? Wake up, we are going to church, shouted my mom one bright Sunday morning. My sisters and I got up from bed one at a time and started preparing for breakfast. We were little girls at that time. Our family did attend prayer meetings once in a while, but not every Sunday. We lived in a small sitio in our mountainous province where our house stands far from our neighbors, also a little bit far from the church. After eating breakfast, my sisters and I excitedly get ready for church as we took a bath and dressed ourselves up. We walked merrily as we go there. It is a small parish we have, and we only get to celebrate Mass once a month. A prayer meeting led by our lay minister is celebrated during regular Sundays. The priest comes from the mother parish of our municipality, and since our sitio is located in a remote area at the foot of the mountains, he travels a long distance walking to our place. Mom, who is God? I looked up to my mom one time as I sat beside her. We were waiting for the priest at that time. She looked at me and smiled. God is the one who created you and me. He is the one who created the world. The plants that you see outside, the mountains, the birds, everything you see, God created it, she answered as she points outside the window. As I looked up at the wooden figure hung in front, I turned to her again and pointing at the crucifix, I asked, Mom, is he God? Why are his hands and feet nailed? That is Jesus, my child, she answered. He is the Son of God. His hands and feet are nailed because he died for us. He loves you and me. He loves everyone, that's why he did that. I didn't quite understand what those words meant at that time. Every night, before going to bed, my siblings and I would perform action songs in front of our mom and dad. Our father taught us a few Christian action songs. Among them, this one is my favorite. The love of Jesus, sweet and marvelous. The love of Jesus, sweet and marvelous. The love of Jesus, sweet and marvelous. Oh, oh marvelous love. Higher than the skies above. Deeper than the ocean. Wider than the universe. Oh, oh marvelous love. It somehow brings joy to my heart, every time my sisters and I would sing this song together. I was raised in a Catholic Christian family, though we were not that devoted. As a child, I was not aware of what prayer is. I just knew that there is a supreme being and that he is God and he loves people. I studied at a Catholic institution when I was in high school and I was also baptized there. Every morning in school, we would do morning praise and read the daily gospel. We also have a subject in Christian life formation where we were taught Christian values and we were instilled knowledge about the Catholic faith. There, I came to know what prayer is all about and how to do it. We always recite the morning prayer, Angelus, and evening praise every night in our school dormitory. We pray the rosary every morning within the month of October. We celebrate masses every first Friday of the month and on every special occasion. I was even a member of the liturgical club. I could say that during those times, despite being in a religious institution, I have not yet established a deep relationship with God. I was busy hating myself, I was busy hating my life. When I was already in my senior year of high school, a congregation of nuns from Cebu came to our school to invite interested students to enter into spiritual vocation, nun. I found it interesting, so I applied for it. Out of all the students, I was the only one who accepted the invitation. I was then requested to go to the convent one day. I can feel my heart starting to beat fast as I was standing at the door. Am I really doing this? This question suddenly popped out from my head. The door cracked open and I saw this sister, warmly smiling at me as she invited me in. We sat at the couch and she began explaining to me all the details about the vocation. A small part of me wanted to back out, but the eagerness to continue was bigger. I was given a month to prepare. I told my plans to my parents one Friday evening as I arrived home from school. At first, they were hesitant upon hearing I need to go to Cebu for the vocation. But I was able to convince them that it is something I wanted to do, and soon after, they gave me their full support for my decision. I had their permission, and even our Gimong knows that I'm entering the spiritual vocation. They were happy for me and even wished me luck. I have already packed my bag and I was about to go when I received a call from my kuya. He asked me not to go. According to him, I'm still too young to be separated from my family. I'm still too young to go to such a faraway place. It will be difficult for me once I get there. I then asked myself, why am I willing to do this? It is a spiritual vocation that I will be entering, and I don't even have that genuine faith in God. I searched deep inside my heart to find my reason for it, only to realize I just wanted to go to a place where nobody knows me. Back then, I was just tired of people's comparison and unpleasant words that I wanted to disappear from their sight. I didn't even consider how my family would feel. I was just so thankful to my brother for stopping me from doing something that later on, I could probably regret. I did not proceed with my plan and obeyed my brother. He was right. It would be a difficult journey for me.